Hello everyone, welcome to the second AnalyticaHP Debate. We are a growing online history and politics blog. Today's debate will be on whether we should abolish the monarchy in the United Kingdom. My name is Yazhou, I am the chair for this debate. Arguing for abolishing the monarchy will be Archie, and arguing against it will be Luke. So, since Luke would like to keep the monarchy, let's have the first opening statement from him.
Thank you very much. All right. So my points for the preservation of the monarchy, I've got a few of them. First is how they've been so central to British culture and British history over the years. And I think it's safe to say that the British monarchy has stood the test of time. Like an institution that has been retained for thousands and thousands of years against all different trials and tribulations, is certain then to have some good and positive effect to it. And remember, we did try to abolish the monarchy once in the 1650s, and that didn't go so well with Oliver Cromwell. Once he died, all the people were begging to have King Charles II reinstated as monarch. And yes, this is an archaic historical example, but it shows that that the monarchy has stood the test of time. An institution that is over 2,000 years old. It goes back to King Alfred the Great. And that, like, through war and disease and fire and all sorts of trials and tribulations, it has been retained. And through extreme socialist prime ministers and who still retained it. That shows that there's something about the monarchy that is important and key to British culture and British history and is beneficial to modern Britain. Now, secondarily, there's also a pure economic benefit of the monarchy, which is the money they bring in through tourism and other means to the British economy, which is undoubtedly beneficial to Britain. They bring in, I believe, the figure is 1.8 billion United States dollars to Britain. And yes, they cost some money to the British taxpayer, $86 million, but the net is quite overwhelmingly positive. $1.8 billion compared to $86 million. And don't forget, a lot of the money is spent on charity and patronage and public service. And lastly, I think the monarchy and the representation of Queen Elizabeth as the head of state of the United Kingdom is key to Britain's role in the world community, as in her representation of Britain and her diplomatic outreach. It has been many times what is kept and has been many times beneficial to world diplomacy, to have a continuous leader rather than a constant changing of leaders and changing of policy, etc., like you have with U.S. presidents, right? I mean, every time there's a election in the U.S., every 4 years, there's a different U.S. president, different foreign policy, and leaders don't know whether to trust them or not. While when you have the Queen being a continuous example of the royal family for a lifetime, she keeps a continuous, keeps continuity to Britain's role in diplomacy on the world stage. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Luke. Archie, would you like to make your opening statements?
Yes. The monarchy is an ancient relic of a past which Britain is constantly telling people, both foreign and domestic, that we are trying to put behind us. Years of oppressing foreign nations, years of war, and years of terrible things, all caused because of a single entity, which was an unelected monarchy. While in the past this is justifiable as a leader which is necessary, and it avoids war and various other things which happen in an unindustrialized, not 21st century, not even 20th century, or many centuries world, and it is no longer justifiable for the cause of peace and stability to have a monarchy in this country. Therefore, the only reason, in terms of the monarchy as an institution as to why it should survive, is that it is part of culture and tradition. My argument.
Stop right there. Sorry, 1 second.
Wait, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. Wait.
Let's mute ourselves when we're not speaking.
Okay. Okay. So, therefore, the only other argument for the monarchy as an entity within this country, despite the economic argument behind it, which I will address in a moment, is the monarchy as an institution. The first thing I'll address in this sense is what Luke mentioned earlier, which is diplomacy. In terms of our diplomatic relationship with other countries, the Queen plays a symbolic role, and as we all know, the Prime Minister is the leader of this country, and he has a Foreign Secretary, and the Foreign Secretary has a civil service department. Therefore, the Queen, in no way, shape, or form, is anything other than a figurehead that does nothing in terms of this country's diplomacy. Therefore, there is no way that the monarchy helps us in terms of our diplomacy. If another world leader thinks that they improve our trust, then they're wrong, because the Prime Minister is the person who changes foreign policy, not the monarch. So, in terms of the monarchy as an institution and why it may be preserved as an institution, it is arguable that the monarchy should be preserved because it is symbolic of a history that some are proud of, and it is symbolic of things that Britain has worked to achieve. However, it is quite simply said that an institution that does nothing other than sit there and take up building space and use up money is not helping the country and is not aiding us in terms of making people's lives better, which is the progressive world, which our government in this country is constantly telling us that we are trying to work towards. Lucas has said that the monarchy brings in 1.8 billion, and we only spend 86 million US dollars on it every year, and it is very much arguable, and I'm going to present this argument to you, that the tourism input that supposedly comes from the monarchy is generated more by the appeal of rich history and the appeal of things such as the Tower of London, which are associated with the monarchy but are not associated with Queen Elizabeth II in any way, and therefore meaning that she and her family are not important in terms of the tourism output of the royal family. Well, some people probably do come just to see them as well. I'd also like to quickly comment that they probably won't actually get to look at the royal family anyway, meaning that all they are coming to see is the residence of the monarch, and Buckingham Palace is in no way I'm proposing that we knock it down or something. We could do any number of things, which I'm not going to talk about because it's irrelevant, with Buckingham Palace, and that means that in terms of the economic output of the monarchy, while it probably does bring in some money, it is not justifiable for the focus that it gets economically. Is not justifiable for some of the things that are happening in our country, with the government-induced austerity and the NHS being so underfunded as well, while the monarchy is their funds haven't been cut at all. Thank you.
So Luke, do you agree that the monarchy aren't actually bringing in this money and people don't actually come to see the monarchy?
No, I don't agree at all, because first of all, from a tourism point of view, the fact of having an ancient royal palace is different to having a working royal palace that that actually provides for a queen. First of all, it's just a no, it's not really a practical thing, but people would rather see a working royal palace which provides for a real queen, like to some people something out of a fairy tale, etc. Is better than seeing like an old royal palace that provided for a king or queen hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And also, it's not just the queen that's the tourism appeal. It's the royal guards. It's the trooping of the color. It's the changing of the guard, all of which are provided for by the queen, and all of which the queen serve as the figurehead too. So that is first point. Second of all, it's not just tourism for which the queen brings in money. The royal family's patronage of charity is quite beneficial to British society, and also just their decades of public service, the way they help the way they advise the prime minister through trials and tribulations, how they learned to be quite a important public servant and a beneficial public servant too. So, and through that they help the country. But and that leads me on nicely to the next part of it, which is not related as a rebuttal to Archie, but I think that the Queen is what provides continuity to British politics and British society. Yes, it is to some degree, and some would argue, undemocratic that the Queen has such a vital role, well, not vital, but an important role in helping the Prime Minister, right? They meet every week in Buckingham Palace, and technically, she's allowed to, quote, advise, warn, and, or one other one, I forgot, but not direct. And the Prime Minister ultimately, the Queen appoints people and things like that, but the Prime Minister ultimately is the one who advises the Queen, or will advise the Queen to appoint people. But I would say that the Queen, she provides a continuity for our politics. Her Queen's speech every year, the Queen's speech every year, and the meeting with the Prime Minister every week is something that provides continuity to British politics. When there's such a mishmash of politics, there's the opposition who's staunchly opposed to the Conservatives, and prime ministers change every 5 years, and the Queen provides continuity to that end, and a certain sense of safety and pragmatism that radical change isn't going to affect something as old and as important as the monarchy.
Archie, what do you have to say about that?
Well, look, the first thing that Luke said was about the symbolic purposes of the monarchy, the changing of the guard, etc. Now, if in a world where the monarchy in the United Kingdom doesn't exist, and luckily there are plenty of places in the world which serve as models, which the country can improve on, so on and so forth. If this were to go ahead, obviously this is a theoretical debate. In terms of electing a president which is able to do exactly the same job, they're able to, ride on a horse around, in a uniform, and carry out all of the duties that are expected of an enlightened.
Do you mean something like a ceremonial president who would only be head of state, like in Israel?
Yes, yes, Israel, India, countries like that is what I'm talking about, in which the president essentially serves as an elected Queen Elizabeth II. The other thing I'd like to address quickly, which Luke said, is about the continuity that the monarch provides through British politics. Now, it's true that the monarch is always there throughout the troubling times, such as these, when she recently delivered her speech to us about the coronavirus. However, I'd like to address the fact that the Queen as a constant is just doesn't exist. because her speech every year at Christmas is barely political. She never offers an opinion, and she doesn't offer sanctuary through difficult political times. She's delivered, I think, three special speeches that aren't at Christmas as her time as the monarch, and she's been the monarch for longer than any other queen or king in history. And I think that means that, and that's evidence that she is really not a constant, and she doesn't provide continuity through British politics, as she isn't involved in it in any other way than sitting in the House of Lords when she does the ceremonial signing the bills and passing the laws.
So, Luke, do you have anything to say for that?
Look, I completely disagree with what you're saying. Like, the monarch's role is largely ceremonial. Like, none of us are disagreeing with that. But I think ceremony is an important part. Well, not ceremony as such, but ceremonial roles are an important part of any culture. And the Queen's symbolic and ceremonial role is important. You said that her speeches in the House of Lords aren't political. Well, they are. She outlines what her government is going to do. She starts every speech in the House of Lords, in the state opening of Parliament, with "my government," da 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 da, and but she's outlining the policy prescription for that next parliamentary sitting, that next parliamentary year. And I think that is an important role as well, to have her prescribe the prescription for each government, Labour, Tory, whatever it may be. So that's an important role. And you address president having a ceremonial president, like in Israel or India, like they do. But that president doesn't provide the same continuity as their monarch, because he is elected like a prime minister, and as such they sort of represent the changing tides of society. They're more, not hysterical, but they're more political as such, because they're elected. They're pandering to a base, like all politicians do. While a monarch isn't pandering to a base. She isn't sort of changing with the tides of society. She represents continuity, and that's not what a head of state as a president does. And we have a prime minister, and he's our head of government, like other countries with a ceremonial president do. And there's not really a need for a head of state who's a ceremonial president when we've got the monarchy. So I think that, yes, symbolic, yes, ceremonial, but also necessary, in the sense that symbolism and ceremony are very important. Having someone who represents the changing tides of society, which is often wrong. And like in the US, to fill those shoes, they have the founding fathers. That's who's on their money, and that's sort of the eternal monarch in the US, is what I would say. But in the UK, we need some ceremonial and symbolic role, and I think the monarchy is perfect to do that. And yes, they don't always make the right decisions, notably Prince Andrew, obviously, notably Prince Harry. But I think, first of all, compared to most families, they try and be the model family for the country. And they learn through trials and tribulations, right? Like, if anyone's watched The Crown, they'll see how many, by the way, it's an excellent show, but they'll see how many sort of trials and tribulations they've gone through. But through those trials and tribulations, they've learned how to be a model family for the country. And, like, no one can say that that is an easy role to fill, to be the queen, to never be political. And I think we sort of owe her a debt of gratitude for being such a great public servant over the years.
So Archie, do you agree that we are better off Queen?
I'd just like to talk first before I talk about the question directly about how Luke is talking a lot about the ceremony and the traditions associated with the monarch, and about how if we were like India and Israel, which are the two countries that we are mentioning, and we had an elected ceremonial president, then he says it wouldn't be the same because they wouldn't be there the whole time. And he talked about how she opens her speeches with "my government," so on and so forth. However, and I'd just like to say quickly though that the main difference, in my opinion, politically, between having a monarchy and a royal family, which are there all the time and are constantly watched by the people and by the press, is that their family politics starts to divide people in a way that they, as an entity, do not bring people together, in a way that an elected president wouldn't, because they wouldn't be in office ever for long enough, even if there was no restriction on how many terms one could have. And an example of this is when Princess Diana died, and when she divorced Prince Charles. Loads of British families and families that are involved one way or another, whether or not they just talk about it in British politics and talk about the royal family, will have spoken about Princess Diana, and it will have created some kind of division within the family as both sides of the debate are presented. And I think that politics such as that divides people belongs in the job of the Prime Minister, because it is the political parties that divide people, because people need to have their own opinions. And I think that figureheads and role models should not be the people dividing society apart. And I think that they will always divide, a figurehead will always divide society as long as they are in office as such for a very long time, like this family has been. In terms of just answering the general question that you asked about whether or not the royal family is good for the country in terms of their ceremony, which is essentially what Luke was saying. No, they're not, because the ceremony is a small part of this country. The laws that she passes are the important part of that ceremony, and I think that there should be no mistake in that. When she starts talking and she says "my government," the monarch has been saying "my government" for a very long time, and I think that there is no reason that we should not get rid of the monarchy just because the monarch can say "my government." And also, if that is what the British people wanted, then an elected president can very much do the same symbolic job. Thank you.
Luke, do you what differences? Well, do you believe that an elected president would be able to do the same jobs, and if not, what differences are there?
Well, it's funny because we sort of heard, well, you didn't really address what I said about a president not having the same continuity as a monarch, being elected every 5 years or whatnot. And they're elected, that's the point. They're pandering to a base. And I think there's an element of dishonesty in politicians which isn't shown at the monarchical level. Second of all, you talk about them being divisive politically. First of all, on that point, the Queen has one of the highest approval ratings compared to any of the prime ministers, and I think that addresses that. But second of all, when has the Queen been political, if ever, right? She has never said a political word in her life, apart from, yes, in her state opening of Parliament, when she addresses Parliament in representation of her government. But that's only her government's role, and she's being a figurehead there. So I don't think she's divisive in that sense. Third of all, if the British people wanted to abolish the monarchy, they would elect a prime minister that would do that. Because let's face it, the Queen wouldn't put up a fight if the British people elected a prime minister who's a Republican, like Jeremy Corbyn or whatever. But I think the British people have shown time and time again that they don't really want to elect a prime minister who's going to abolish the monarchy. They see her as a role model. She fills the shoes of a sort of model person of that country, like the founding fathers in the US, like Gandhi in India, like any of those people. I think they fill a ceremonial sort of role as a personal representation of that country. I think that's an important thing to have. And you can't have that in a political leader because they're so divisive. Political leaders are.
Just to wrap up the debate, Archie, could you give your closing statements on this?
Before I make my closing statements, if that's okay, I think we have enough time left. Luke said that I didn't address president continuity. I may have forgotten. So my comments on the continuity of a president in a situation in which we have a sort of enlightened monarchy president kind of a system, is that the Queen does not provide the kind of continuity that is sought by people, because you either have someone who is constantly commenting, constantly there, or you have someone like a grandfather or a mother, and she is not a grandmother or a mother to anyone other than the royal family. And I think that in terms of her continuity through troubling times, yes, she made a speech recently, but I can't remember what she said in her speech, and I watched it. I think that she is not in the public eye enough to be important in terms of continuity. In the news in this country, we read news about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle all the time because they broke away from the royal family, and some tabloid newspapers don't like that, and some newspapers do like that, and we are reading about them. But the monarch as a person does not provide the kind of is not there all the time in any form. So in terms of my closing remarks, I've spoken today about institutions, I've talked about diplomacy, and I've proposed an enlightened president. While I myself am not for abolishing the monarchy, these are the arguments that I have presented today, and I hope I fulfilled your demands in terms of what you wanted to hear. So thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Archie. That was an interesting debate. I enjoyed doing that, and I think we learned some interesting points from both sides. But to sum up my case, first of all, there is the continuity they provide through times of trouble, through good times, and how they've been tested over thousands and thousands of years, and they've retained their position as the monarch. And I think that goes to show something, like I said in my introduction. Apart from that, there's the economic role they play in bringing in money to the country, their charity patronage, the way they represent Britain diplomatically, and how their symbolism gives continuity, gives safety, and gives to an extent a sense of security to the British people. I think that's very important, and I think we're not going to see the monarchy leave anytime soon. God save the Queen.
Okay, and that sums up our second debate. Thank you very much, everybody.
By the way, we'll put a link in the description to our website. We're AnalyticaHP.com.
And Do read our articles, make an account, buy a subscription, so on and so forth. Thank you. Goodbye.